Hi. Welcome back to my Child Free by Choice romance book recommendation series. I need a shorter name for this series because saying that in every video is going to make me lose my mind. If you have any suggestions for what this series should be called, let me know because that is too long of a title. Anyway, if you missed the first video, I will link it down below so you can watch the first part of this series where I explain why this series came about. Long story short, I'm a child free by choice person. I love romance books, and I have been slowly but surely building up a list of all of the romance books that have child free by choice characters or couples and sharing them with you all. So if you are also a child free by choice person and you want to see yourself represented in romance books, because there aren't that many out there, these videos are for you. I have honorable mentions to go through before we get to the actual recommendations. Then, like the last video, I'm going to read the parts in these specific books where the characters have either conversations with each other about not wanting kids or they say it in their own inner monologue. I do this just so going in, you know exactly what you're going to get. Because for me, when I was reading through some of the books that were recommended on these child free by choice lists, there weren't actual conversations. The characters never actually voiced it. These books just didn't have any kids in them. And that's what some of these honorable mentions are going to be. But in my lists and my videos, I like to recommend books where the characters specifically say that they are child free by choice. I think there's a big difference in relating to a character that actually voices it rather than characters that don't say anything about it at all and there just aren't kids in the books. For me, I like it when it is said outright and you know for a fact there is no doubt that the characters and the couples in these books are child free by choice. That is a little disclaimer before we get started. Now I will get into the honorable mentions. The first honorable mention I have is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is one of the books that is on a lot of child free by choice book lists, but I reread this book earlier this year and spoiler alert, this is still a 5 out of 5 stars. Danny, who is a college professor, badass college professor, and Zaf, who is a retired rugby player and is the security guard in the building that she works in. And Zaf, let me tell you, he is not just a book boyfriend, he is a book husband, okay? This man used to play rugby, he has thick thighs, he started a charity for kids, working with them and their mental health, and he listens to romance audiobooks. Yeah. Read this. They don't specifically mention that they don't want kids, but there isn't any mention of children now or in the future. So if you want a really fun, spicy romance with no kids mentioned at all, I recommend Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. The next honorable mention that I have is In a Jam by Kate Canterbury. Yes, she was in part 1 and she's back again. The woman loves to include child free by choice characters in her books. This one, we follow Noah and Shay, who were friends before in this small town. Shay moved away for school to have a career in a big city. She is left at the altar by her fiance. This just so happens to coincide with the passing of her step-grandmother, who owns this really huge tulip farm in that small town that they used to live in. Noah is back there too, running his own small town business. The reason why this is an honorable mention is because despite them having a conversation about not wanting kids, specifically Noah not wanting his own kids, Noah is actually a legal guardian for his niece, his sister's daughter. His sister has been involved in really shady shit in the past and she lost custody of her daughter, and Noah is now in charge of her. And so technically he does have a kid, right? It's just not his own biological child. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that he specifically has a conversation with Shay saying that he doesn't want his own kids. He doesn't want his own biological children. He already has his niece that he is being responsible for, and that's way more than enough for him. And if you read this book, his niece is a handful, and luckily Shay is actually a kindergarten teacher. She's actually helping his niece because she does have a hard time in classroom settings. Their relationship is really, really sweet, both with each other and with Noah's niece. I typically do not like children in books. However, his niece in this, she's an icon. She's an icon. I love her. She's so funny. She cusses a lot. She pretends to be a pirate. She's iconic, I have to say. Despite the couple being child free by choice, there is a kid in this one. Know that going in if you want to read this, but that is In a Jam by Kate Canterbury. The last honorable mention is An Unexpected Paradise by Chelsea Curto. This is an honorable mention, not because it's not child free, because it is explicitly child free. It's because I DNF'd this book. That's not to say that it's a bad book, but I read it way back when it first came out, and I went on Goodreads before I did this video just to remind myself what it was about. The author had put in the summary that there's a new version of it as of October of 2023, and I read this book before that. There may be large changes to this book that will make it way better than what I read. The reason why I DNF'd it was because at the time it was incredibly long, super dense, and for no reason, especially because if you look at this cover, I was expecting a really fluffy summer beach read, and there was a lot of emotional depth and a lot of heavy topics talked about in this book, and also it was long for absolutely no reason. I did DNF it right after the couple had the conversation about them not wanting kids, because at that point I got what I wanted out of it. I mean, I knew they were going to end up together in the end anyway, so there wasn't any reason for me to continue on if I wasn't enjoying it. You have two co-workers who are tasked with going to a work conference or a convention of some sort for their industry. They both work in IT. This conference is in Key West, Florida, so it's kind of like a vacation work trip. For some reason, the female main characters, I don't even remember their names, mind you, but for some reason the female main characters' ex-boyfriend is there, I think because he also worked in tech. They end up having to fake date. I don't remember specifically why, but they end up fake dating, I guess because the ex-boyfriend's there, but also why would you need a fake date? Anyway, as they're fake dating, they end up falling in love. There is a conversation that the main characters have about not wanting kids, and the big reason that the female main character doesn't want kids is because she was an eldest sister and she took care of her younger sister, and she feels like she has pretty much exhausted all of the maternal instincts that she has having taken care of her sister. The male main character also doesn't want kids, and I remember him specifically saying too that he was scared to say that he was child-free because it's hard for men to say that they don't want kids without sounding like an asshole, especially when they don't know if the woman does or doesn't want kids. I understand that because I feel the same way as a woman. There are times when I almost feel as if I'm the asshole for saying that I don't want kids when everyone around me is talking about their kids. That one line that he said about that stood out in my head because I found myself in that position many times as well. So if you're looking for a summer beach read with child-free by choice characters, An Unexpected Paradise by Chelsea Curto. All right, let's get into the recommendations. The first recommendation I have is Headliners by Lucy Parker. This is, I think, the fourth or fifth book in a series. I believe it's called the London Celebrity Series by Lucy Parker, and it follows a bunch of these London celebrities. In this particular book, we follow Nick and Sabrina, who are rival presenters at opposing TV show networks. They've been rivals and having this very public feud for years. Everyone knows that Nick and Sabrina, they are literally each other's biggest ops. They have no problem roasting each other publicly, but then Nick takes it a bit too far and exposes one of Sabrina's family scandals that she did not want publicly aired. And this blows up because of social media. It affects both of the networks that they work at. Both of their teams sit them down and tell them that they need to get their shit together. And in order to save their careers, they are forced to co-host a morning show that is suffering in ratings. Their task is to hopefully get more viewership and basically turn this morning show around. And they have until Christmas to do this. But now they are co-hosts on the same show and they have to work together. This is truly rivals to lovers. They cannot stand each other. And there were times that I felt either of them took things just a step too far. But to me, that helps build the tension between them, you know? There is a very super quick conversation about them not wanting kids where basically they're talking about their future and Nick says babies. Sabrina says, if by babies you mean baby puppies or baby dogs, then yes. And then Nick says, if you add in baby cats or kittens, then also yes. So that kind of establishes the fact that they do want babies. They just want babies with 4 paws and not 2 feet. It's been a while since I read this, but I remember that Nick also has nieces and nephews and he loves being a fun uncle and very content with that. There are children in his life, he just prefers not to have his own. I love Lucy Parker's writing. She has really fun, dry humor. One of my favorite romances of all time is actually another book in this series, and it's called Pretty Face. Love that book. That book too, actually, technically child-free. They don't specifically say they don't want kids, but there aren't kids mentioned at all. So I could include that as an honorable mention. Really fun rivals to lovers romance in Headliners by Lucy Parker. Next, we have Anyone But You by Jennifer Crusie, another author that's made it back on the list. She was in the first video. This book, Anyone But You, was actually written before Bet Me, which was in the first video. That book was written in 2004. Anyone But You was written in 1996. So if you think 2004 has some outdated jokes, Anyone But You has a few more outdated jokes. But I think, again, for it being written in the late 90s, it was really ahead of its time for having child-free by choice characters, and child-free by choice characters who knew that they were child-free and stayed child-free. To me, in the late 90s, I feel like that was very revolutionary. I'm sure there were people and individuals out there who had that mindset. It just wasn't as normalized as it is now. In this, I'm reading off of my iPad in case you see me looking down. In this book, we have Nina, who is 40 and recently divorced. She is now a free woman, and we love to see it. She is now living alone with her elderly dog and experiencing life outside of marriage, aka freedom. She lives in a apartment complex where they have those stairs on the outside of the windows, and her dog goes out her window, down the stairs, and jumps into the window of the neighbor below. That is where Alex, her neighbor, lives. He is 10 years younger than her. He is hot. He's an ER doctor, and they form a genuine friendship because they are in such different places in their lives and have experienced different things. They form this very fun, lighthearted, easygoing friendship because they don't expect anything from the other. They are truly themselves around each other, the ugly, the bad, the good, the great. They can be totally themselves around the other, which obviously then makes them realize that they actually like the other. They form a romance. There is tons of chemistry between these two, though. They have very similar outlooks on life, very same humor. The way they talk to each other is really on par with the other. They just understand each other. There is a scene in one of the beginning chapters where Alex is actually breaking up with a woman that he's currently seeing because she is adamant about having kids and thought that she could change his mind about that. And he is setting a straight boundary and said, no, you knew what you were getting into. I told you from the get-go, I didn't want kids, and I'm not changing for you or anyone. From the get-go, he establishes who he is and what he wants. And as time goes on and him and Nina begin to get close, they have those conversations about children and marriage as well. You know, Nina is coming from a divorce, so she has the experience of marriage and what she does want and what she doesn't want. It turns out that because she doesn't want marriage or kids, and neither does Alex, they realize they both want the same things. There is a conversation while they are in the middle of having a snack of Oreos, and Nina thinks that Alex is eating way too many Oreos at once, and she says, you've had enough, you're going to get sick. And he says, you must be one mean mother. And she says, nope, no kids. And Alex says, did I just put my foot in it? And Nina says, nope, I never wanted any. I'm just not the maternal type. Nina says, I'm the oldest of 6 kids. I already raised 5 brothers and sisters. I'm done. And then Alex proceeds to tell her that he also does not want kids. If you're looking for a really sweet, slow burn, friends to lovers romance with a child-free couple, read Anyone But You by Jennifer Crusie. The next recommendation that I have for you guys is a romance book that is the most unique romance I have ever read in my life. It is The Bones of Love by Megan Montgomery. First of all, this cover eats. This cover is absolutely iconic. It's one of the reasons why I even picked this book up. I saw the cover, was obsessed with it, and then I found out it was a child-free by choice couple. Yeah. Right up my alley. As I said, this is a very unique romance between a forensic anthropologist and a Greek Orthodox priest. Yeah, you heard me correctly. The characters are very unique in their personalities, but also what they do is so fascinating to me because I have never in my life read a romance between 2 characters anywhere near those professions, okay? And you get glimpses into what they do in their career, and it was very interesting, to say the least. And you wouldn't think that they work together, but they do. They're actually friends. Decca, who is the forensic anthropologist, she has had feelings and a crush on Gus, who is the priest, for a very long time. Neither of them have acted upon it because Gus knew that he was going to go into the seminary and become a priest. And also because Gus knew that he didn't want to ruin the friendship that they have, especially since they are in the same friend group. He didn't, not only did he not want to ruin his friendship with Decca, but their friendship group as a whole. Nothing serious ever came from Decca having feelings for him until Gus graduates from the seminary. I don't know anything about the Greek Orthodox religion at all. Apparently there's a time in between you graduating seminary and you getting ordained as a priest that in that time you can either get married and be able to stay married for the rest of your life, or if you don't get married in that time and you become an ordained priest, you are celibate and a monk for the rest of your life. That's crazy. I didn't know that. I grew up Catholic, so I had no idea about this religion. I didn't know how any of it worked, but very interesting. In this time that Gus has graduated before he becomes permanently ordained, he is coming to terms with the fact that he is most likely going to be celibate for the rest of his life. And he's not happy about it. He is struggling with that reality, but this is his calling and this is what he wants to do with the rest of his life. Out of the goodness of her heart, because she genuinely cares about him and doesn't want him to be lonely, doesn't want him to lack companionship, Decca proposes marriage to Gus and says, "What about me? I will marry you so you don't have to be lonely and you don't have to be celibate for the rest of your life." And it turns out Gus does actually have feelings for Decca. He just didn't want to act upon it because he didn't want to ruin anything between them. So the tension in this was palpable. Oh, there was so much tension. And let me tell you, the spice in this, wow. There is something about a priest. I don't know what it is, but there's something about a priest that will level up the spice. Do you know what I mean? And of course, Gus accepts because, well, he's not going to be celibate for the rest of his life, okay? Not if Decca is literally knocking on his door saying, "I'll marry you." Like, he's obviously not going to turn that down, obviously. It was longer than I thought it needed to be, and it was very heavy at times. There is a lot of talk about religion and grief in this and reflection on death. These characters, there's a lot going on with them. There were times where it got distracting and it took away from the romance because we were so focused on that. I still really enjoyed their romance. I enjoyed their friendship. And there were just some hot scenes in this. I have to say, there were just some hot scenes in this. Anyway, let's get to the conversation that they have. And it's very brief. They're basically going over topics like check boxes, saying like house, family, like what are your stances on this as we go into this marriage? They need to establish this foundation. And this conversation is from Decca's POV. Gus plainly asks, "Kids?" His tone was different, but I could tell he was trying not to be. He wasn't going to like my answer. It would probably end the conversation, probably end our very short relationship, but it was best to spit it out. She says, "I got my tubes tied in grad school. I'm sorry if that's a deal breaker, but I've never wanted kids, and even if I did, I'd rather just foster or something. I understand," and he cuts her off and says, "I got a vasectomy. Just don't tell the church we're supposed to be fruitful and all that." She got her tubes tied. He got a vasectomy. That to me is the ideal relationship. Okay. No kids, very unique romance. If any of that interests you, I highly recommend The Bones of Love by Megan Montgomery. This next recommendation, I'm going to go into a little bit of a ramble and discussion about because this book specifically is really near and dear to my heart because of how relatable it was to my own personal experience. That book is Not Another Family Wedding by Jackie Lau. This is a romance between Natalie and Connor. Natalie is a middle-aged, successful professor who comes from a very, very, very large Asian family. You can already see where this is going. And her younger sister's wedding is coming up. Huge family affair, huge event. Family from everywhere is coming in. Because it is her younger sister, obviously, Natalie is getting all those questions of, when are you going to get married? When is it your time? When are you going to have kids? And haven't we all been there, right? She asks her good friend Connor to come and join her, to be her emotional support friend as she has to navigate all of the wedding festivities. And they've been friends for a really long time. Connor has no problem helping her through this journey. And honestly, I don't even blame her, because if that was me, I totally understand having an emotional support person there, because it's a lot. When you come from a very large family, especially if they're an Eastern culture, it's a lot. it is a lot to handle. And sometimes you just need that person to lean on, to hold your hand through it and help you get through the day. You know, this is a friends to lovers situation. So obviously throughout the course of the book, these two end up falling for each other. But the biggest theme in this book is the fact that Natalie is a child-free by choice person, and it is her largest and it is one of her biggest insecurities. It is the reason why she doesn't want to date, because she has dated men in the past who have broken up with her because she doesn't want kids, and so she thinks that she's never going to find anyone who will want to date her but not want kids. She even says at some point that she knows there are men out there that don't want kids. Those are just not the men that want her. And girl, been there. When you come from a family with a cultural background like she does, like I do, from a very young age, you are taught that being successful means making your parents proud. And part of that is getting a good job, getting married, and having kids. And when you're taught that, it becomes ingrained in you that these are the only things that are going to bring your parents joy and make them proud. And you don't want to do anything to disappoint them. So when you even have an inkling of a thought that might be the opposite of that, you are in a flight or fight mode. You are thinking, what can I do? And how can I spin this in order to survive, in order to make it seem like I am not disappointing them? And it's hard because once you do voice exactly how you feel, exactly what you want in life, and it is not what you are, and it's not what you've been taught all your life, you experience so much backlash from the people closest to you, a lot of judgment, a lot of resentment, and it's really hard to get through that. That is very prevalent through this book. She goes through a lot of conversations with her family members, repeatedly saying, having to remind them that she doesn't want kids and she's happy with her choice and she's going to be fine. I'll read you some specific examples. When she's talking to her mom and her aunt, I think the wedding rehearsal or one of the things that they're getting ready for, one of the events that they're getting ready for in the wedding. And her aunt says, "You don't want to wait until you're 40. It'll be harder than running around after a little kid." Natalie gulped some of her wine. Why did people feel the need to say such things to single women in their 30s? She considered saying she didn't want children, but in her experience, it wasn't worth the hassle. And her aunt would probably just think she was a freak. Plus, Aunt Carolyn would ask why not, and Natalie wasn't in the mood to explain her life choices. Nobody asked you to justify why you wanted kids. Why did she have to justify her decision? Period. And she thinks to herself, I don't want to carry a vomit-inducing watermelon in my uterus, then push it out of my vagina. Thank you. Is that so hard to imagine? And I've dealt with enough diapers and poo explosions, courtesy of my baby sister, to last a lifetime. I also like having a good night's sleep and traveling the world. I enjoy kids in moderation, but they're exhausting. And I have no interest in living with a small child again. Then they become teenagers. And now you're going to tell me I'm selfish, aren't you? Many of the reasons people have kids are selfish too, if you really think about it. And that's pretty much exactly how I feel about not wanting kids. So that was a perfect inner monologue. Connor actually is divorced, and the reason why him and his wife broke, and the reason why he got divorced from his wife was because he realized that he didn't want kids. They'd been trying to have kids for a very long time, and when they went to the doctors, it turns out that he has a low sperm count and it wouldn't be possible for them to naturally conceive a child. And upon this, he reflected on it and actually realized that he didn't want kids at all, and that he was really just going through the motions and trying for his ex-wife. But in reality, he really didn't want kids. He didn't want to be a father. And when he finally admitted that to himself, it was something that he knew he couldn't compromise on, and it was something he knew he couldn't put his ex-wife through. And so they ended up getting a divorce. Finally, when Natalie has the guts to actually admit to Connor that she doesn't want kids, even though she's been very terrified because it hasn't worked out in the past for her, he is just as relieved as she is. I'll read you the conversation. The thing is, I don't want to have a baby at all, not just with Anthony, her ex, but with anyone. I don't want to get pregnant and give birth, nor do I want to adopt. I don't want to raise a kid. It's not that I don't think I'm capable of it. Actually, I'm pretty sure I could do it, though I doubt I'd be an amazing mom. But I don't want to, and my mind isn't going to change the instant you put a baby in my hands. And I highly doubt I'll regret it when I'm older. I'm 36. I know myself by now. Yes, it's partly because I don't want to bring a child into this overpopulated, fucked up world with the scary rise in global temperatures, but that's only a small part of it. It's just not for me. And it's not because I'm selfish or I don't like children. Connor cuts her off and says, Natalie, of course I don't think you're selfish. And I believe you when you say you won't change your mind. In fact, I don't want children either. And she says, you don't? And he says, I thought I did, but I was relieved when Sharon didn't get pregnant. When she suggested IVF and adoption, that's when I knew for sure it was something I never wanted. As I said, this book is super personal to me because there were moments where I truly felt like the author had written something out of my own inner thoughts. I related to Natalie in a very personal way. And I think if you are someone who also comes from this cult, and if you are someone who comes from a cultural background similar to Natalie's, similar to mine, and you've had these thoughts or you've had these feelings, I definitely encourage you to read this book because I think you will find pieces of yourself in this book. And it's very healing to read. And it's healing to read about a character who is either going through or has gone through something that you've also gone through, because it validates you and everything that you think and want in your life. So highly recommend Not Another Family Wedding by Jackie Lau. The next recommendation is Shipwrecked by Olivia Dade. This is a fun, fluffy contemporary romance about two co-stars. So we have Maria and Peter, who had a one-night stand long time ago. And then the next morning, I believe Maria walked up and left. And Peter was like, oh, okay, I thought we had something more going on, but I guess. And then they get cast as co-stars for a fantasy show, and it takes place in Ireland. They are also contracted on the show for 6 years. So after their one-night stand, they have to be co-stars and see each other on set every day for 6 years. Nothing happens in those 6 years. They keep it very professional. Both of them actually wanted more, but Peter kept his distance because she was the one that walked out. And so he took that as a statement that she didn't want anything. And in order to keep everything professional between them, they didn't initiate anything. Then on the last day of filming, babes, things were initiated. Yes, they were. Okay. Once they're done wrapping this whole show up, Peter's going to go back home to Hollywood in LA, and Maria is going back home to Sweden. How are they even going to work things out? Of course, they are a child-free by choice couple. They are also a plus-size couple, so I love that representation as well. They do have a conversation about not wanting kids, and I love it because it's a very real conversation. Like, I would react the same exact way if I had had this conversation with someone. But basically, they are finally together. They are talking about where they eventually want to end up staying, and they decide that they want to stay at Peter's place. I don't know if it's in LA because they're talking about a farm. Sorry, I read this a long time ago and I really don't remember much, but they're talking about how the place that he has, he's saying with caution that in the neighborhood that his place is in, that there are a lot of children. If that interests you, there's a community elementary school, a playground near a clubhouse, a lot of pint-sized kids in designer clothing selling lemonade at the ends of their driveways. And Maria says to him, I thought, or maybe I hoped, she hesitated. Hoped is probably more accurate. Anyway, I kind of hoped you were past the point of wanting kids. And Peter literally says, oh, thank fuck. Real. I don't want kids either. I have zero desire to take on that responsibility, especially given how hectic and unpredictable our schedules can be. She says, excellent. Happy to have the matter settled. No kids. I understand why he was sort of skirting around that and very subtly mentioning kids, because it can be a daunting conversation to have up front. But his reaction, I would have reacted the same way. Very fun, like I said, fluffy contemporary romance. If that's your jam, read Shipwrecked by Olivia Dade. The last recommendation I have for you guys is What We Deserve by Lizzie Stanley. This should come with an asterisk because to me, when I read this, again, a couple of years ago now, this read like a Wattpad book. Now, I'm not saying that as a disrespect to this book or Wattpad, because some of the best books that I have ever read in my life were on Wattpad, okay? The reason why this read like Wattpad to me was because it had very cliche tropes, very cringy dialogue at times, a predictable plot, but very addicting as well. I could not stop reading this. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. That to me is the perfect formula for a Wattpad book, okay? Again, not that it was bad, because I ate this shit up. I read it in one night. You have Emily, who is moving to a small town, gets a job as a receptionist for a tattoo shop. And then you have Eli, who is a tattoo artist at this tattoo shop. He is the cliche, grumpy, broody MMC, and she is the cliche, fun, happy, good girl. And for some reason, there were also romantic suspense elements towards the end of the book that came out of nowhere that was giving very much Wattpad as well. So that I remember. And again, cheesy, corny lines sometimes. But if you want a romance book that you can read that is easy, fun, you can turn your brain off, you don't have to use much brain power to read it, read this book. It's addicting. It was addicting to me, at least. And they are a child free by choice couple. Similar, actually, to Natalie from Not Another Family Wedding. Eli is very adamant about not wanting kids and stays away from dating because he doesn't want kids and knows that most women do. He at first tries to stay away from Emily because he knows he has an attraction to her, but also is wary of becoming too close to her because he, in his mind, knows that she probably eventually wants kids, right? However, Emily can't have kids. She has a medical condition, so trigger warning for that before you go in, know that. She has a medical condition that prevents her from having kids naturally. I remember this scene specifically when she's explaining to Eli the doctor's appointment that she had when the doctor told her that she wasn't able to have kids. The doctor's reaction to her being super nonchalant about it. Like the doctor had told her that she can't have kids and she just shrugged it off and was like, okay, I didn't want them anyway. And the doctor was shocked. I remember that specifically because when she was telling him, she was laughing at the fact that the doctor was shocked that she truly didn't have a problem with not being able to have kids because she didn't want them anyway. And Eli himself is gagged and gooped because he didn't think that he would ever find a woman that he was attracted to who also didn't want kids. So it worked out for both of them. I think he also can't have kids. Like if I remember correctly, I think they both have conditions where they can't have kids, but it doesn't matter because they don't want kids anyway. I want to say, I think that's what it is. Either way, they don't want kids. So that's the moral of the story right there. If you want an addicting, fun, spicy time, read What We Deserve by Lizzie Stanley. Okay, those are all the recommendations I have for you guys today. I will link the first video in case you missed it down below and the other recommendation lists that I found. I forgot to include it in the first video, but I will link it down below in this video for sure. If you have any recommendations, let us know below so we can all share the wealth, share the child free by choice romance books, and spread the knowledge, spread the word, okay? Spread the gospel. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and I will see you in the next one. Bye!